Good evening, everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of the BBC, the Bordweall Broadcasting Company. Tonight, we are going to be theory crafting about domain and settlement selection, and also tying that into the map that was released during the last public Q&A that debuted the kind of like the new fantasy style that they're going to be using for the map for domains and settlement selection. I have tonight as our guest Renegade Destard, known to many as Tiny Dragon, the cookie dispenser of Bordweall. Renegade, if you'd like to introduce yourself a little bit, what your package is, and in COE, and we'll start from there.
Oh crud! You kind of already did it. Renegade Dastard. I have the package of a tiny dragon, but that's a count package somewhere. I like facts and friends and talking about theory crafting because that's fun.
Excellent. All righty. So, Noz, I guess. I think if we can go over to the screenshot, I'll do the just a quick little recap of what Caspian had stated in the in his State of Illyria earlier on this month, and we'll just be going over the bit that pertains to. He had titled that section "Domain and Settlement Selection for the Masses,"
I'll be happy to do that after I introduce myself, D, because there's people out there that don't know me.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'm not seeing the screen, so I didn't realize you were on the screen as well. My bad.
No. I'm giving you a hard time. So yeah. Switching over to your screen, we're going to jump right into where Caspian left off. For those that don't know me, I'm Nazim Newell. I'm a Count of Newell County and soon to be Duke of the Protectorate Duchy of Blood Oak. So, glad to be here. I'm just giving D a hard time. I'm being a dumbass now. But anyway, we'll switch over to that screen now, and it should be live, D, for you.
Cool, thank you. And that's easy to do because with my low bandwidth, I can't watch the stream while it's up. So it's like, oh my God, what am I doing something wrong? Alrighty. So as Caspian states in there that, typically we've always been thinking that, wow, domain and settlement selection is going to affect obviously those with mayor and baron packages on up, as in, counts, dukes, and the monarchs as well. But he made it clear that not only are we going to do those during what I would call kind of like the original domain and settlement selection, but he's made it clear that after domain and settlement selection, that they're going to have what they call a reverse auction for the remaining packages that aren't claimed during the original domain and settlement selection. So everybody who purchased a package, who paid for a package, will be claiming first through IP order, unless they haven't actually selected or chosen a server yet. And I think it kind of like it got mixed reviews when it was first announced. I'm actually somebody that is in favor of this. I've kind of like thought about it hard. It kind of like it depends again upon how it's done, but as long as, for me, Soulbound Studios sticks to their original premise of that those who backed earlier, people purchasing a similar package later will have to pay, more, and that's to kind of like, just out of respect and out of consideration for people who backed the project earlier when it was kind of like riskier, let's say 2 years ago. As long as it kind of like sticks to that principle, I think it's good. But it's difficult to quantify that, right? Because even now we've got the Tale of Two Hamlets up, where you can get 2 mayor titles basically for $250. And admittedly, that does not come with, any design experiences, EP. It doesn't come with a building, or, it's kind of like a bare bones thing. But 2 of those are on for sale right now, which is a great value for $250, which basically puts it down to $125 a piece. And I'm hoping that the reverse auction doesn't kind of like start dropping the price from there, because it will, as you can see on the screen, in fact, I'll kind of like put a little thing by each point right there. But as long as, here it says, I got the wrong. There we go. I got it. Sorry about that. Little technical difficulties. This is the first time I'm trying to use the live screen kind of like live. So at that point here, he makes the point that it makes the world feel lived in with pre-existing stories and narratives. And I think that's true. You're going to have more people. It's going to be kind of like more populated on the settlement area. I think he had stated that only 25% of the counties are accounted for and have been bought by players, and even a much lower percentage than that for the settlements. So getting other people to purchase in on them is going to be great.
Indeed. Medusa points out that the Twin City Pack does come with EP 225 per mare, or 525, excuse me.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's almost like another $50 worth of EP included in that as well. So it means there's more communities being built between now and launch day, and that can only be a good thing, right? The more recruiting that is done out there, whether it's through friends in other games or communities, or just within the COE already existing COE community, the better. And let's see. There, it removes the launch day feeling of a land rush, which isn't an intended mechanic or feeling in the game, and that has always been a thing that they've really pushed right from the get-go. I mean, that was known right from Kickstarter when exposition was described, that they want the world to feel like it didn't start on day one of game launch, but that it's already been kind of like a living, breathing world with a long kind of like, nicely detailed and colorful kind of like history and lore already existing to it. Renegade or Noz, do either of you have any thoughts or comments about that?
Renegade's muted, so I'll go ahead. But no, we were off camera and I was picking my nose and stuff and waving, acting silly at Renegade. She didn't realize that we weren't, being seen. But so the only thoughts I have about the new mare package you've been talking about was the people that paid in earlier and paid a substantial amount for their settlements, and now we're getting packages where you can get 2. I don't know if you planned on talking about that, D, or not, but here you can get essentially 2 for such an awesome bargain that it may upset some of them that purchased mare packages prior. You're changing your screen. I was going to reference some of that in my.
Let me put the reference.
I'm giving you a hard time. But yeah, I mean, to me, I think they're definitely trying to fill those slots. So, it's two-edged sword. You take the good with the bad, I guess.
Yeah, Renegade, any comments on that?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, good. I think my only thing is I hope they don't bring the price to such a point where people who intended on playing together end up buying separate cities and separating like their play groups, which kind of isolates people. Like if we end up with a lot of cities of one person, because play groups get split up because they get to that point where it's like, well, why wouldn't I? then you either end up with abandoned cities or isolated players. And that would really be my only concern with it.
Yeah. Alrighty. I just got a little notification. I thought I'd had enough bandwidth left, but apparently I've now gone to low speed connection. So if my voice starts sounding choppy, my apologies on that. I used up the monthly allowance. So wanted to kind of like segue from that into the map. The map, the map that they had shown here.
Yeah, it's gone to crap pretty quick after you mentioned that.
Already, what we're going to do then is if you can carry on, I'm going to try to
Did you get that?
I got nothing. It's completely robotic.
Okay, he says carry on.
All right.
What's the plan, Naz?
What's the plan? I don't know. All right, so what we can do is we can talk about some of this stuff that you were working on today. I know that you're talking to me and Dee quite a bit today about the map that was presented to us, and some of the different breakdowns of the villages with the example of the county. And keep in mind this fantasy map that we're given. It's a complete concept piece at this point. It's not 100% accurate data, but you were looking at some of the ways the settlements were laid out in the county portion of that map. And what were some of your concerns there?
Well, it wasn't so much concerns. It was more that they gave me a map and I immediately went full conspiracy mode on it and decided to try and digest the entire thing. Basically what I was trying to do was looking at that map, and I don't know if you can kind of zoom in on the picture of like the county. There's 6 major cities in there, and I was trying to come up with a way that would be helpful for people to try and judge what city they would choose, because mayor, count, duke, king, all of them have to choose a city. And it was kind of defining values that would help making that decision. And the first one I kind of came up with was, if you look at those 6 cities, I don't know if you can show that or not, or
I've got it zoomed in about as good as I can.
Okay. But if you look at like the 6 cities, the first thing I tried to do was determine the area of influence. And that I really wanted to do only at the town level, and not, I kind of discounted hamlets and what was the slightly smaller one called? Hamlets and villages, because I figured the number of settlements they're showing is way beyond what are actually going to be present at launch. So most mayors and counts and dukes and kings are going to end up placing in a town or higher. So that's those 6. So what I did was, between each of those points, and I think I shared that picture, I could probably send it to you as well. I drew a dot, and then I kind of drew lines that kind of broke up the county into the areas of influence of those 6 cities and towns. They're towns. And it made it a little bit easier to understand what would really be impacting those cities resource-wise, which would impact their economic development. So, like, for example, when you do that divide, you can kind of see the southern city ends up with the largest area of influence, but not necessarily any big influencing terrain or flora or fauna or really much of anything. It's just a lot of really small hamlets and a lot of area because it's so far from the other 5 cities.
If I can just quickly interject, I think I'm back. Noz, if you can send me a VC call again, I'll try to do the screen share so that we can illustrate this. Sorry about the technicalities, guys.
Because I just have my real-time board up, which is all the doodles that I've shared. It's my conspiracy board.
All right, we're going to try to get D back in here again.
Oh, anytime they give us pictures, I get really excited about pictures and immediately have to analyze the pictures way more than I should.
And D, I've got you on VC now if you want to share your desktop. Or does VC completely kill your connection at this point?
There we go.
Gotcha.
You should have it back up now, I think. Is the screen back up?
It is. It's loading very slowly, but it is coming back up. Yeah, it's super slow, D.
Let me try another jetpack. You guys carry on with the show.
Okay.
Yep.
So I kind of came up in my mind how I would make these judgments on the cities is I had a few, where did I put it? I had a few qualifications. So like you have that influence zone, which I could send you the picture of so you could share if you want. Of my terrible doodles. Forgive the terrible doodles. This is just conspiracy map doodles. That's slightly better than the crayon doodles. But that influence zone, and then I kind of considered what would happen to any of the hamlets or the villages that remained after those other ones disappeared. Because I don't anticipate all of the cities on that county actually being there, if that's an example. Like, that's just way too many settlements in the area. Probably about 50% in my mind of the villages and hamlets will probably disappear on launch. I think that the towns will all stay because I think they'll all be occupied. But I think most of the smaller settlements would disappear. So you can kind of consider about 50% of those left are going to be like feeder settlements that feed into those large towns, because you need something from a smaller settlement, you're going to end up going to the bigger one, probably your closest bigger one, before you go just to the capital or to the duchy county capital or the kingdom capital, because that would be a long walk.
So you're of the opinion that, because immediately when I looked at this, I immediately thought that county illustration is completely unrealistic. There's too many towns. There's too many, large settlements in that county for an average county to sustain this number of settlements in population. But you think this is closer to accurate and closer to what we'll actually see?
I think we'll see the same number of towns, because I think that's what most mayors are going to end up with, is a town. So maybe some of these towns will disappear in less populated counties, but even a count who has maybe 16 mayors, and I don't know why they do that in one county, but maybe they fill in, and then they fill into the villages, and somebody trickles over into the hamlet. And then at that point, I think most of the other ones disappear, because I just don't think that's the quantity of land necessary to support that large of a population based on those city sizes. I think we're going to see a lot of these settlements disappear. They talked about how they were like optional settlements to give people lots of different choices. Because if there's only 6 and that's it, and the 6 are chosen and that's it, well, maybe I don't want that 6th town. Maybe I want a village. Maybe I want the village in the mountains, because it's just going to be me and 2 friends or something along those lines.
Okay. And so what is it about the detail of these maps that you like or dislike? Because for me, I'm looking at it and it gives you a pretty good idea of what you're looking at.
Well, I mean, even looking at these sort of areas of influence that you have for these different things, there's within those 6 cities, there's very different. Like, one of them is very obviously lumber. That's that centralized city. It has more lumber around it than any of the other cities. One is the only one that's connected to the main road. Another one has all of its feeder cities on roads, and it's on the coast. Another one has lots of river access, and the variety surprised me, honestly. I thought it was going to be a little bit more uniform in the way that they had these sort of stamped terrain items. But there's noticeable differences, enough so that if somebody's like, I want to have a mining town, it impacts that instead of just picking any of them because they all have metal somewhere.
I want to throw the full screen up here so we can take a look at that as well. I don't think we've showed that yet. But I've got the cartography concept, the full piece that they released recently, and I gotta say I agree with you. It is far more detailed than I thought or even expected. But on the same token, I don't think it's too detailed, right? So I think that it gives us, preparing for domain and settlement selection, a good indication of what we're looking for in that particular domain or what we can expect out of that particular domain. And there's, indicators there that show that there's a forest here, but we don't know how big a forest it is. We don't know how many trees are in it. And we don't, it may just be a little patch of trees or it may be a giant forest. We don't really know. But there's some lumber there of some sort. The rivers are way more detailed than I thought they were going to be, and that's what a lot of people were concerned about. Was in the initial map selection, we didn't have any kind of idea as to what waterways were going to look like in our domains, and I think this will definitely give us a much clearer picture of waterways and different size rivers that we'll be able to traverse. And I think that was a huge sigh of relief for a lot of people, including myself.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to try and see if we can actually figure out the direction of the water flow, because if you look at the county map, it's you're not quite sure.
And that's the thing about these maps is it gives you a good idea, but it doesn't tell you all the details. You're still going to have to make your best educated guess and literally walk out there and see the lay of the land in order to know exactly what's there and exactly how it's laid out, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think another thing like you have to kind of consider when choosing your city would be relational resources, because if you look at the kingdom level of that map, wood does not look like it's going to be a very rare resource. But if you go down to the duchy level, there's not a lot of wood. You come down to the county level, even there's only one place that really has any quantity of wood. So within that county, that city is very important. Within the duchy, it might be able to actually export and provide some value, but in the kingdom as a whole, it's not really. That won't be the place you go for lumber. So it's kind of relational resources can really impact the value of a city, one compared to another.
All right. So what are some of these other doodles I've seen you and Dee talking about today? It looks like you laid out the kingdom map with the different colored squigglies here and the orange and purple lines. I was not a part of that conversation. So that's got me intrigued. I'm kind of interested.
So there were two things I kind of did. I took this map and I figured out that that's map G from the original maps and selection. And I took the kingdom, like the kingdom lines and biome lines, and I just got the lines and I overlaid it. That's the black and white one, which I think if you scroll up is above it. So that's the original biome lines and kingdom lines. And then the orange and purple one was me going in and tracing the kingdom line and the biome line. And the thing that I thought was really interesting, yes, tiny doodles, was that from the original kingdom and biome lines to the one they presented to us is there's drift. Not in the biome lines, but in the kingdom lines themselves. So the kingdoms are not as they were presented in the original G map on this. And maybe that's just a concept, or maybe that's telling us there's going to be some drift in kingdom lines.
Well,
what's your thought on that?
I think what that's a clear indication of is that there's going to be a lot of transitional biomes and a lot of kingdoms, and a lot of even duchies, for example, are going to have multiple transitional biomes. So, people that think that they're going to be stuck with one particular tribe or another because they don't want to walk all the way across the map to seed different tribes into their area, I think we're going to have a lot more choices than we may have originally thought because of the way they're laying these kingdom lines out, crossing over biome lines.
Here's the thing about it is the orange lines were the biome lines and the purple were the kingdom. The orange line biome lines didn't change from the original map, but the kingdom lines did. So kingdom's borders shifted maybe about 10% total from what we were originally presented, what we made these decisions on. So that was the concern I had, was this is not exactly what we were told we were going to have. Maybe it's purely just the concept art and I misunderstood what was happening. Or maybe there is going to be some change in our kingdom size.
Or maybe we're going to have a couple of different options for tribes that we may not have thought possible because of some of this overlap.
Yeah, I think I would have preferred to see the biome line shift a little bit instead of the kingdom ones, but as long as they don't change the masses too dramatically, like if there's big shifts, like puzzle piece cutouts between the kingdoms so that they can have like biome changes, I think that would really freak some people out.
Dee, if we've got you back on voice, you can jump in at any time, buddy, and help us out.
I've got a red light on my connection, so I'm not sure how I'm coming across right now.
You're coming across in voice just fine for us, but when you try to fire up VC, it goes downhill really fast.
Gotcha. Okay. Then if you can, I just posted an image. Sorry, guys, we'll try cobble this together. We had like a nice presentation with my screen share was going to be showing and everything, and Adobe Photoshop. But Noz, if you can put up that image that I just showed on the in the BBC channel. And basically what that is I was discussing earlier with Renegade about the legend and what's on the legend and what isn't in the legend. And I think the first thing that struck me was I was a little bit disappointed that, understanding that is map G and everything's kind of like, tilted instead of north to south, it's tilted west to east, is that basically all of the large mountains occur in the top two kingdoms. And obviously it's a fantasy world. The devs can build it obviously and adjust it however they want, but they've also made it clear that they do want it to have reality and have it kind of like tied into things and concepts that we see in real life. And for me, not all the large mountains are up in the north. I mean, certainly in Scandinavia, certainly in Siberia, Alaska, etc., you've got some impressive peaks. But further south, you have large peaks and mountain ranges as well, such as, the Rockies, the Appalachians, the Himalayas, the Andes. Even in the tropical rainforest, you look at Machu Picchu, in Peru. These are high elevations that aren't purely tied to latitude, and the devs have said that they will have the ability to kind of like tweak up and down the elevations in different places. And I think it would be great just to be able to see a little bit. I think there was like a half dozen small mountain peaks shared by scattered through the other remaining four kingdoms versus hundreds of large peaks in the top kingdom. It'd be great, as I say, to see like a lonely mountain or a neat or another range. Other things that I noticed on that menu, and then I'll ask for both of you to look at to comment on it, is they had the icons, and I understand this is just the concept, but they had the icons for hamlet, village, town, and city, but they only had two icons for the military ones, which was the fortress and the castle. And they haven't got the keep in here or the outpost, etc. And so I'm wondering if this map legend, as they have it, is going to be further fleshed out, because another important piece of information, at least that I'm missing, is that they had given us an indication that although you wouldn't kind of like get like a an icon for where a mine would be or anything like that. We would get a rough idea that kind of like, in this biome with these kind of, whether it's small hills or rolling hills or whatever, that there would be a chance of whatever the local resources might be, right? Whether that's iron or copper or whatever the case might be, or specific types of herbs, or anything that might be hidden. They're not going to give specifics of it. So when you're looking at it on a county level, it would be nice to see if there is at least a chance for those resources appearing in that county. What's you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, my thought initially, and first and foremost, D, is this map that we're looking at, and I'll switch to it again, the big one. This map that we're looking at here, as Zimma in our chat is pointing out that there's only 6 duchies in the kingdom and so on and so forth. This is just a general visual representation of what we can expect. Like, we're looking for complete accuracy in a lot of these things because, the nature of us and who we are, we're, competitive and trying to get ahead of the power curve. But I don't think there's a whole lot of factual information here in this presentation. I think, it's a visual aid to give us an idea of what we can expect. It's not 100% perfect by no means.
Yeah, exactly. And I get that. And I think from the concept standpoint, I think it's nice. I really like the idea that they have gone to the fantasy kind of like art style and the concept map, because we're gamers, right? And that spans kind of like the whole strata of how people game. But we're definitely going to have the meta gamers in there. I mean, without any doubt, had they used kind of like the Google Maps type satellite map, everybody would have been screenshotting that at the highest detail, and there wouldn't be anything to discover, at least from that point of view. A mountain's always going to be where a mountain is. A river's always going to be where a river is. Settlements might come and go, but the main geographic and topographical features would remain. And I have no doubt that people are going to do the same and kind of like, on the zoomed in level, take screenshots of the entire continent kind of thing and stitch them together in Adobe Photoshop or GIMP. But it's not going to be anywhere near as detailed. And I like that. I like that concept. But for me, for them to, I don't want to be, it is a concept. I don't want to be harshly critical, but the fact that even on the, legend, that there are things missing, like the resources and everything. And I mean, domain and settlement selection is meant to be happening imminently. They said early April, which to me, is anywhere between the 1st and the 10th, because once you get to the 11th to the 20th, that's mid-April, and past the 20th, it's late April. I think I'd have been more at ease, I guess is what I'm trying to say, if there'd have been a little bit more detail on this.
Maybe it's supposed to represent the cartography tool to a certain extent. Like, this is what somebody would draw if they were drawing the whole world and weren't very well informed.
Yeah, and that's
the cartography tool. That's really exciting, because I think that's something accessible to people.
Agreed. I'm kind of like, I'm a cartography freak, so I tend to be overly critical. Perhaps I'm not kind of like trying to be harsh. It's just like, I'm looking at this and it's like, if this is what they have so far, there's so much more that needs to be added. And they've got to do that, and procedurally generate and everything like that. I guess what I'm saying is that for me, and again, purely speculative, I don't see domain and settlement selection actually happening until the second half, potentially, of April, and maybe even the early part of May. I so hope that I'm completely wrong on that, and that everything's lined up and everything's good to go, and they just need to push the button and and away we go, kind of thing.
think the difficulty comes with they're taking the this is my guess, this is my theory from conspiracy board zone, is that they took the assets from the cartography tool and are attempting to mask it over the actual generated map, because they realized that if they give us the actual generated map, we would all flip out and get really excited and analyze it way too much and know too much. But if they put the like less level of detail over it, then it would be okay, and it would show us something that we'd end up familiar with. The maps would look consistent across the entire game then, instead of this one Google Maps.
I think what Dee's getting at, that he feels like this was hastily put together, and I would agree. There's some watermarks in there when the first iterations came out, and I sent a message to SERP, hey, did you guys intend to do that? And they corrected that very quickly. I was surprised by that, but they corrected that issue rather quickly. But I don't want to put words in your mouth, Dee, but I think what you're saying is it feels like this was very hastily rushed and thrown together. And so for me, I have to assume that it's just a visual reference, and it's, they didn't put a whole lot of time into this. It was just, hey guys, here's an idea of what it's going to look like. This is not in any way accurate. It's just a visual reference.
Yeah, I would fully agree with that. And again, I'm not trying to bash on them or anything like that. I'm just saying that if they have this kind of like figured out in full, that to me the legend would also be kind of like figured out in full, right? We would actually be seeing the keeps and the outposts and things like that. I understand that they wouldn't necessarily all show up on this particular map, because this map is purely concept, right? And nothing, perhaps in a way as to how it will be, other than they're using the cartography symbols. But then not all the cartography symbols have been shown on this legend, and perhaps it's not a big deal. Perhaps they have those and they just showed a selection of them, right? And it's not anything to worry about. I do love the fact that they've got the rivers split up into large river, medium river, and small river. Again, totally speculative here, but it might be that, when you're selecting, whether it's your duchy or your county or even a settlement that might be, on some kind of a river, that hopefully we'll see that large rivers will allow for large vessels to travel up it, right? And large hulled vessels, medium rivers, like the ocean-going vessels that we'll discover later on, the ones that can discover the newer continents. The medium-sized rivers will hopefully allow for things like, the warships that they had, and the cutters and the trading vessels. And the small river, possibly you might be able to get one of those, small, what did they call it? The sailing dinghy or the rowing dinghy? Yeah, the sailing rowboat. Maybe that's the only thing vessels of that size will be on those rivers. So it's cool.
I'm going to switch back to the map that we're talking about, because for me, one thing I noticed right away is the roads are indicated on here as well, and so what I noticed right away is I would typically think there would be roadways along straddling major waterways, and I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing some roadways connecting major hubs, but I'm seeing waterways that would be a more viable route between others. So it's going to be interesting to see, once we get into game, what's the best mode of travel going to be from point A to point B, because it may not be a road, it may be a river in the middle of your domain.
Well, knowing players, it's going to be a straight line through the mountains in the rain, because that's the shortest distance on the map.
I know Dee's super excited about the rivers, and we talked about that a little bit while you were finagling with your internet connection, your sat link. Dee, we talked about that quite a bit, and how there is they're not showing us all the meat on the bone. They're just giving us a glimpse here And the forest, we know there's a forest there, but how many trees are there? We won't know. And Renegade mentioned, what direction is that river flowing? It's going to be important to know that. We won't know until we actually get there and get our feet on the ground. So there's still some mystery there.
It reminds me very much of those like photo filters that you have on your phone when you like apply an art style. That's kind of what it reminds me of. And maybe that's what they did. But that would be very intense if that was what they did. And I want to apply that to real Google Maps if that's what they did.
D, you still with us?
Yep, I am still here. I was just quickly replying to a question about tunneling in the chat. And thank you guys for asking questions and making comments in the Twitch chat. Kind of like it makes it more interactive, and hopefully we can try and, it's theory crafting, right? We don't necessarily know anything much more than you guys do. It's just we gave some thought to these things and are kind of like laying them out there and food for thought kind of thing. Was there anything else that we were looking at in terms of discussing domain and settlement selection on Noz and Renegade? I've gotten a little bit thrown for a loop with the connection sabotaging the whole presentation I was going to be giving.
D, I don't even know what we've talked about for the last 45 minutes. All I know is there's 50 or so poor souls that have been watching us, and we're doing the best we can. There
was a plan. There was definitely a plan.
Yeah, there was. But yeah, I don't even know what we've talked about, to be honest.
Answering then Airwave Raptor's question in there. What was SBS's guess at the end of the 10-year plan again? I presume Airwave Raptor, you're asking about what would happen to the game. And basically they said, maybe they produce a different game. Maybe they have one that, we're meant to be spanning, broadly speaking, from something that's meant to be like an Iron Age era to maybe early steampunk, early Victorian kind of thing. There's talk about maybe
2020.
Yeah, black powder being in at the end or something like that. And he said maybe they do, maybe they extend it, maybe they leave the server running and start a whole new server in a different era or a space era or something like that, So, I think it's a little too. Yes. Or they just wipe and say, okay, let's do it again on the same map, see how you do it this time.
Somebody said they're surprised. Katie's surprised that I'm awake right now. I can fall asleep instantly. They train me in the Marine Corps to do that. It doesn't matter where I am. Don't worry. I try hard enough. I can do it.
Oh, and certainly no suggestion that they bobby kit. Trust me. As somebody who put in, I think I had about 4,500 hours in Life is Fuel Your Own, and I would actually have one-on-one chats with Bobic in Skype. What happened with that was oh my God, that's to Bobic it has definitely become a verb,
It's a sad one too.
So we covered the fantasy style, the new fantasy map, and all very well, but not so much domain and settlement selection. Was there some specific points that you wanted to hit on, D, for domain and settlement selection?
I think the main thing that I want to put out there is that I sincerely hope that people that are going to be purchasing during reverse auction, that they do kind of have the foresight to check with, if they're buying a settlement, to check with the count. If it's an NPC settlement, that they check with the, if it's an NPC, if they're looking at a settlement in an NPC county, then to check hopefully with the Duke of that that NPC county is in, because I think there's there's different levels of this, and I was actually going to try and show it with our interactive map that we have on our own website now. But there are some communities that are almost, I wouldn't say overpopulated, but very populated, and will have plans for developing and doing things. And so kind of like putting a settlement in there might ruin those plans. And obviously, everybody has a right to place where they want, right? But it might be received very, very differently than placing in a, even we have duchies that are very underpopulated, and oh my God, they're gonna love people to come in and place settlements and take up counties and help build the law. So it's, I'm hoping that it doesn't cause too much kind of like drama, but in the end, Caspian has stated very, very clearly that this game is about conflict and drama. That's why we have the Dance of Dynasties. This is all a part of it. If you get somebody that places in your settlement that you were like, or in your county takes a settlement that you were eyeing for taking over afterwards, that's planned. The other thing that I have is it would be good to know how long the reverse auction is going to go for. I mean, is it going to go after domain and settlement selection? They open it up during the 3rd Kickstarter anniversary, and you can purchase one up until exposition starts? Or is it going to be available until Kingdoms of Illyria starts, which is where that's a different kind of like aspect of the kind of like pre-Illyria experience, and people buying an NPC county that maybe you had already conquered in Kingdoms of Illyria. Does that exclude them from participating in Kingdoms of Illyria, etc.? So that's just thoughts and ideas that were cropping up in that regard.
And Kismet mentioned in chat, not exactly domain and settlement selection, but what does this do to KOE, since KOE was to be used to take care of those quote-unquote empty counties and settlements? Good question, man. Where are we at with KOE? I haven't heard KOE. D, you mentioning KOE just now was the first time I've heard KOE mentioned in months. Are we, is KOE still a thing? I don't know.
Yeah, no, KOE is definitely going to be a thing. I don't want to talk about KOE right now because I cannot remember what I know about it that is NDA and what I know about it that is public. Right, there's that blur, and I don't want to inadvertently reveal NDA stuff. But it was meant to be kind of like the conquering of NPC settlements and counties at one point. I'm sure we'll be getting an update at the appropriate time that will kind of like clarify. This is again a game in development. Things will shift, and we should expect them to shift. It's like when you're that far out from having to think about 3 years ago or 2 years ago about KOE, and now how things have changed, and now we've got the reverse auction, which I think 2-3 months ago none of us even thought that we just thought we're all going to be conquering NPC settlements and NPC counties and duchies. So
I think the point of the question was, the benefit to participating in KOE was the ability through its participation to upgrade a mayor to a count, to a gentry to a. Well, I think we just lost Renegade.
I don't know what happened.
No. But if the SBS's intent is to sell off all of these settlements at lowest auction, there's not going to be much reward left at KOE. Is the point I think they're getting at.
Yeah, but I think that what they would do is they would find a way of adjusting that, right? They would put in change the game mechanics or the rules for KOE is what I'm looking at. Is probably what they would is how they would adapt on. Alrighty. Does anybody actually have any other questions? If you do, pop them up quickly in the Twitch chat, especially if you typed one earlier that wasn't answered, because we're actually over our regular 45 minutes, but I'm happy for this to go up to the top of the hour, which is kind of like where we have the hard cutoff on that. Yes, and Zimmer's correct. Reverse auction is where, for example, you might have the county packages, let's say, start off at $1,000 in the first week of reverse auction, which is high, right? And people might go, oh, but I really, really wanted that county, so I'm going to pay for it. Or do you speculate and say, you know what? They said they're going to drop, and I'm speculating. They said it's going to drop $100 a week, right? For the next 6 weeks, and it'll bottom out, let's say, at $400 or $300, whatever the case might be. Or do you wait? And because you want to snag it at a bit more of a bargain, but then you're running the risk that somebody snags it before you do, kind of thing, you know. And it's also, you know, one should look at the fact that it's not just what I would call kind of like strangers snagging these. This is a way for existing counts and existing dukes to actually be able to get more of the land for themselves. They can, you know, do community fundraising or figure out, you know, which of the unclaimed counties would they like to purchase, you know, before game starts. There's all kinds of possibilities on it.
I think the biggest concern for the community right now is that they're going to reverse auction these settlements and these domains, and I mean they're gonna let the dollar ticker tick all the way down to like giving it away. I don't think they're going to do that. I you know, I could be wrong, but I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think selling out every seat is, you know, their you know, main goal here. I think that, you know, going into launch, if there's a county or settlement here or there that's, you know, NPC ran, I don't think it's going to make or break SBS, and I don't think they're too concerned with that. I would hope that they would want, you know, players to get into game and have the ability to progress and, you know, take over their NPC domains and settlements. So in order for that to happen, there would have to be at least one or two scattered around, you know. I don't know. I could be completely wrong there, but I you know, I think a big concern for reverse auction is that they're going to let that you know, dollar ticker tick all the way down to zero and give it away to somebody. I just don't see that happening.
No, and I would tend to agree. I think SBS has been very good about that and sticking to that principle. And sorry, Ren, I think you were about to say something. I cut you off.
Well, I was just going to talk about how I think with these reverse auctions and the cheaper cities, it's kind of fulfilling the player's need for owning something. And a lot of people don't necessarily want to run a town, but they want property. They want their farm. They want their blacksmith. Like, they want property, but then they're like, oh, well, I can't get that, so I'll buy a town. And I think they would probably see a lot better return on their efforts if they, instead of offering just that, they offered, here, you can buy your parcel. And then that gets into the whole taxless parcel thing, which I remember was a big debate a long time ago. But I think they're trying to fulfill that need for people wanting to own a part of the world. But they could probably do it in another way.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Alrighty, so I was just reading kind of like through the chat and everything like that. I think we've asked or at least answered all the questions and everything. And yeah, as Zimmer says, EP parcels aren't exempt from tax. Caspian stated at one point that what would happen is that, I think that was kind of like the inherited land, or I've forgotten what it was called, but that what would happen is that the owners of those what a lot of people consider to be tax-free parcels of land that they can purchase during Expo, that those owners would need to negotiate individually with the count as to what the tax rate would be.
I just remember the concept of tax and those parcels was a big fight for a long time. I haven't seen that fight recently.
Yeah, it'll pop up again at some point, I'm sure. All righty. So we are at the top of the hour. I want to thank you all for bearing with me. My apologies to everybody, particularly to Noz and Renegade, who unexpectedly got thrown into not just being guests, but now running the show. without the benefit of the content and everything that I had to present. You guys did a great job. Thank you. And as always, to our viewers and Noz and Renegade, I'll let you guys close out the show.
No, you made us start it.
He didn't he, Renegade? Well, I promise you, normally it's not this hectic when you come on. So we hope to have you back, and we appreciate you coming on. It was good talking to you. And Borne's trolling me in chat. I'm just not going to even recognize him, even though I just did. But again, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
It was fun being here. I'm glad I was informed before this happened.
Yep, always. All right, guys. Thank you. Have a good night.